Today marks 2 years since the Taliban seized back control in Afghanistan. On the 15th of August 2021, militants captured the capital of Kabul and took over the presidential palace. 20 years of foreign occupation was brought to an end. Afghan officials fled, including President Ashraf Ghani, and thousands rushed to Kabul airport, desperately trying to find space on flights leaving the country. But for those who stayed behind, what has life been like since the takeover? And what does the future hold?
It's time for American troops to come home.
Gunfire rings through the streets of Herat.
Taliban fighters have reached the Afghan capital, Kabul.
I did not, nor did anyone else, see a collapse of an army that size in 11 days.
The Taliban's latest crackdown on their rights and freedoms.
Mix of sanctions, drought, and terrorism has brought Afghanistan once again to the brink of collapse.
Despite the Taliban's promises of moderation, the last 2 years have seen a crackdown on freedom of expression and women's access to human rights.
Everyone is expected to fit into the ideological mold of the Taliban. They're intolerant of difference in philosophical, religious, or political views. They're also somewhat intolerant of minority groups, whether they are ethnic or religious. And in terms of dissent, dissent is not allowed at all. It's not possible to peacefully protest or to express a differing view through the media. That is cracked down on, often with violence or arbitrary detention.
Women in particular have seen their rights and freedoms severely limited. Within a month of the Taliban takeover, the Ministry of Women's Affairs had disappeared. Its building was handed over to the newly reformed Moral Police, known to enforce rules through public beatings and imprisonment. Many women have led protests, but they've been harshly suppressed, and new restrictions continue to be introduced.
For the past 2 years, women in the country have faced profound limitations and restrictions, from being banned from going to school over the age of 11, women being banned from going to university, restricted from traveling alone without a male chaperone, accessing public spaces like gyms and parks. Sometimes women inside the country tell me that we're treated less or worse than animals. We've been imprisoned in our homes, told where to go, who to speak to, what to eat, how to dress. So it is literally hell on earth for these women.
The country is also in the midst of an economic and humanitarian crisis. Following the takeover, many countries suspended aid and imposed sanctions. The US blocked the Taliban from accessing billions of dollars in assets. The UN has estimated that 34 million Afghans are living below the poverty line, roughly 85% of the population. The economy hasn't entirely collapsed. The Treasury has been able to produce a budget and raise revenues, and imports and exports have gradually increased during the past 2 years. But revenue generation still produces barely a third of what's required, and the regime is beginning to face other challenges.
Taliban are facing 3 severe tests, and these can impact their survival in coming years. First and foremost is the threat from ISK or Daesh, the Islamic State of Khorasan. They are the new disruptive force. They are the ones who are threatening minorities, the Sufis, the Shias, the way Taliban used to do at one time. So that's the biggest threat, because that is ideological, and that can hit Taliban where it really hurts. Second is the internal divisions between Kandahar and Kabul. Kandahar remains very dogmatic, very isolated. Bigotry is the name of the game. And the other part is Kabul, which wants to work with the world, which wants to engage with the regional countries. Pragmatic Kabul versus orthodox, isolationist Kandahar. That is the second threat to the feasibility of the whole idea of Taliban. And last but not the least is the economic crisis.
The humanitarian situation in Afghanistan has caused international debate over the continued boycott of the regime. Many have advised against engagement with the Taliban, whilst women's rights continue to be restricted. Others believe this will push the country into further poverty and instability. After initially suspending operations, aid organisations like Save the Children returned to the country earlier this year. What all experts agree on is that Afghanistan cannot be forgotten about.
Afghanistan should be kept in the spotlight, not just kept, it should be placed much more in the spotlight and be given much more attention by the international community. Many Afghans felt that they were abandoned, who felt let down, and who are still fighting for a return to more of a democratic system, one which rights are respected.
For now, the Taliban's power in Afghanistan appears secure. But as debates continue over international response, many Afghans are seeing their freedom and livelihoods slipping away.